Hey guys, Yogi Doug Johnson back with another Yin Yoga flow for you. And this is my torso flow. And so it looks at the torso as basically having four planes, a front, two sides, and a back. And what we try and do is allow the muscles in each of those planes to stretch. Of course, we're going to work the spine as well, but this isn't exactly the same as my spine flow. I'm focusing again more on stretching each plane of the torso twice. All right, so we will stretch the intrinsic muscles along the back of the spine or on the back side of our body. We'll work the obliques, which are on our sides, and each of these are groups of muscles, so it's not an individual muscle. There are many muscles in these groups. And then the rectus abdominis and the pectoralis and anterior deltoids on the front of the body. So the front will sort of split up into two groups, the upper and then the lower, because I find it challenging to target them both at the same time. So I hope you get a lot from this. If you do, again, it really helps me out to even just something as simple as a thumbs up. But if you subscribe to the channel, if you like this kind of stuff, even better. If you leave a comment, even better. And if you'd like to help support me financially, check out the links. You can make a one-time donation or sign up monthly on Patreon to donate a little bit or contribute a little bit to help me with this. That allows me to continue making these for free for people who may not be able to afford yoga during these challenging times. All right, I hope you enjoy it, and I'll see you on the other side. So this position, Pentacle, is kind of like neutral. If there's a lot of pain or discomfort in this position, you might want to consider finding an alternate one. And if you need any suggestions with that, just reach out and let me know. Pentacle is what I would call a restorative posture. It's meant to give us time to balance, to heal and restore, to relax. But it doesn't really exercise or work the body in a significant or meaningful way. So to come into our first yin posture, our first active posture, we'll take banana pose. With banana pose, we move our hips over to the right edge of the mat. Extend our arms up overhead. Reach up, grab the right wrist with the left hand. Take the left leg, move it to the left, and then cross the right ankle over the left. And then from there, you can move yourself over, your upper body over to the left until you feel a stretch in your right waist and ribs. So if you do not feel the stretch, then that means the pose isn't really working as intended, and so you might want to continue experimenting with the position of your body. If you do feel the stretch, that's enough. You don't need to go any further or do any more. You just relax there. We'll be here for 5 minutes. And then the final thing you need to check is that this feels safe for your body. So there isn't a sense that this is somehow injuring or hurting your body in some way. Once you've checked those boxes in your own mind, then it becomes very much about being patient and waiting. Another way of thinking of this is receiving. So instead of thinking that you are maybe having to be patient and wait for a reward, which in this instance might be coming out of the pose, you simply think that as long as you're in this pose, your body is receiving benefit. And so you want to stay in the position and still as long as you can. Got about 3 minutes left here. About 1 minute left here. Okay, so we'll come on out of that, come back to a neutral position, and just rest for a moment. Hopefully you can feel there's a difference between the right side and the left side. The right side, which we're just stretching, and the left side, which was basically resting in that posture. And now we'll take things over to the other side. So we move our hips over to the left side. Extend our arms up overhead. Reach up, grab the left wrist with the right hand, pull ourselves over. Take the right leg over, cross left over right. And then again, not everyone needs to do this, but you might, I do. You move or scoot your upper body over. And when do you stop? When you feel the stretch in your left side. So waist, ribs are really what we're targeting today, because again, this is a flow for the torso. But you might also feel it in your hip, and I do for sure right now. So nothing wrong with that. Extra stretches generally are not a problem. There's no extra charge for that. So don't worry about extra stretch in your hip or maybe in your shoulder or arm. But again, as long as that feeling is within the range of what you consider to be safe for your body. We are stretching our obliques here. We have 3 layers of oblique muscle, internal, external, and transverse abdominis. Also potentially if we feel it up in our ribs, are getting into the intercostal muscles. You have 2 layers of intercostal, internal and external. And you might feel it in your back or your hip, but again, today we're not as concerned about those regions of the body. It's not to say they're not getting benefit. I do actually think my hip is benefiting from this because my hip has been funky, it's been weird, it's been injured, so this stretching of those tissues in my hip feel like it might be helping the hip to heal itself and balance itself. Okay, a little over 3 minutes, just stay with it and continue to receive the benefits of this posture. About 2 minutes left. All right, so let's unwind. We'll come back to a more neutral position. And again, in yin, we call this a pentacle. Don't be afraid to change your pentacle pose based on how you're feeling in the moment. So at this stage in my teaching, I don't think of asanas or postures as static things, but rather various positions we can put our body in to receive certain benefits. So any position that brings us those benefits could be considered a version of that pose. So in Pentacle, we just want to be relaxed and comfortable. From here, let's bring our legs in, we'll give them a squeeze, and we'll just move a little bit. And this is our counter stretch. And this is called the leg cradle. So just a little bit of intentional movement to bring balance and relief to the body. And then we will hinge up to seated. So hands under the hips, palms down. We extend the legs up, we lift the head and neck, take a nice deep breath, exhale, lower the legs toward the ground. Just before they touch, pause, hover. Inhale, bring the legs up, and exhale, come on up to seated, and that's just called hinging up. Okay, now we will do our next set, which targets the backside of the spine. So we join the soles of the feet together, and a very common thing that I'm going to discourage you from doing right now is to do this. Okay, this is a different pose. It can be thought of as a different pose with different benefits, which is stretching in the inside of the groin. So instead, I'm going to encourage you to push your feet out. The exact distance just depends on you, depends on what you're feeling in your body. But generally speaking, the closer my feet are in, I feel more of a stretch here. The further out they go, the more the stretch comes into the backside of our body, and that's where we would like it to be today. Now, as always, feel free to use support in a forward fold like this, something under your knees, forehead, forearms to support you. So blocks, bolster, blankets. You can also sit on something to push you forward more aggressively if you like. So again, don't be afraid to experiment with leg position. There's no magic position that works for everybody. You again want to tune into your body and let it guide you. Let it tell you what is the optimal position today, because it will be different from one day to the next. What we'd like to feel here is a gentle stretch along the back side of our body. Many of us do not have a lot of tension in our back, so you may not feel much of a muscular stretch. Instead, you might feel it more in your joints along your spine. The good news is that's every bit as much helpful and good for you as stretching the muscles in your back. So whether it's your muscles or your joints, both are good for you. And again, the one exception to that is if you are outside of the range of what is safe for your body to do. How do we know what's safe and what's not safe? It's actually a trickier question than some people might want you to believe. One indication, though, is pain. As you've heard me speak about before, pain and discomfort are not necessarily the same thing. So there are many things we can do that are uncomfortable that are good for us. Honestly, there are even things that we can do that are painful that are good for us. But pain can be one indication that we are outside of the range of what is beneficial or safe for us today. And so especially if you're unsure for some reason,
then I would encourage you to just heed that warning until you get more information or have more experience. 2 minutes.
Okay, so let's go ahead and come on up gradually, and we'll take our next posture, which is just going to be an enhancement of what we just did. We'll turn up the intensity a little bit, if you will. So what we'd like to do is just take our legs out straight now, and this is called the caterpillar pose. And we fold forward, and again we can use support to help support our body if that's what we'd like. And again, we're still targeting the back side of the spine. Alternatively, and I only recommend doing this if you're fairly sure that it's safe for your body, is to do an inversion we call snail pose. And in snail, we're doing the same exact thing. We're targeting the back side of the body. And the way that we would do that is just by coming onto our back and then bringing our legs up overhead like so. So now again, if there's any sort of pain in your neck or back when doing that, headache, anything like that, I just recommend today, just don't do it, and you can try again at another time. So the benefits of doing this pose upside down instead of just folding forward, and if you look at it, it's exactly the same pose, right? If you just picture me essentially sitting on the ground instead of being upside down. Now I'm doing the exact same thing. My legs are straight. I'm folded over in half. So what is the difference? Well, one difference obviously is I'm inverted. And inversions have certain benefits for the body. Some people actually spend a lot of money to get an inversion table. And yogis have known this for a long time, and so they have developed all sorts of ways to invert the body without buying an inversion table, just naturally or just using the body. So this is one of them. Again, in yin we call this snail pose, and in traditional yoga it's called halasana, which means plow. So an important thing when doing this posture is, you saw me do it earlier, is to shrug your shoulders underneath you so that the weight of your body is borne by your shoulders and arms and the back of your skull and not your neck. My neck is actually not touching the ground at all. It might look like it is, but it is not.
the shape has a lot of options to it. So things that you can explore here are interlacing your fingers like this. Some people, they can't do that, or it's very uncomfortable, so you could have your hands like that. Excuse me. You can hold your back like so. You can hold your legs, ankles, feet. Your legs could be straight, they could be bent, they could be together, they can be apart. And some interesting things to try here are actually doing the pose somewhat asymmetrically, like maybe moving your legs off to one side. Now again, which of these choices make sense in your body, are actually good for you, bad for you? This depends on you. There's no perfect way to do the pose that's safe and effective for everybody. You have to be willing to engage with the posture, to feel the posture, to experience it, and then to let that information guide you into what choices you make. Okay, so gradually making your way back onto your back. If you're upside down, please take your time. There's no rush. You can use your arms, bend your legs, and just gradually come back onto your back. Once you're down, don't feel like you need to straighten your legs immediately. That can be kind of intense on your back and spine, so you just relax for a moment. Again, if you pay attention, you can really feel what the body is ready for the most part. You can feel how the tension releases. And then once it does, you can gradually splay out more comfortably onto your back for the rest of the time. Okay, bringing the legs in, let's give them a little squeeze. And again, the movement is important in this phase or stage. So we move, stretch, whatever we need to do to feel relief and balance. And then once again, we will hinge up to seated. Remember, when doing this, there should not be pain in your back. If there is, then try doing it with your knees bent more. That tends to relieve any strain in your back.
And by all means, if you have chronic pain in your back, get it checked out by a doctor or a physical therapist or maybe a yoga therapist, an acupuncturist, someone who can help with that type of, someone you trust who can help you with that kind of pain. Chronic pain like that is usually an indication that something isn't right and that we should address that. There are many different ideas about how to address that. Some of them in modern medicine I don't necessarily personally agree with, but if that is your, you agree with it, you trust it, then you can go that way. Or there are very ancient modalities in things like yoga and Tai Chi, acupuncture, massage. There are other ways of dealing with musculoskeletal pain and issue, things like that. Okay, enough about that. Let's come into our next posture. We bring our legs now straight and wide. Anytime we're doing that, we're in some kind of a dragonfly, what's called a dragonfly pose. The simplest kind is just folding forward, but that's not what we want to do today because we would like to stretch our torso. Remember, this is our torso flow. So the simplest version of this stretch is to fold over the left leg. Okay, and we just fold over, and I'm holding the foot not to pull myself down, but simply to hold myself in place. What I'd like to feel is a stretch here. So notice if you feel that, then perfect. Just stay right there. You might also feel it here. And this is a related energetic channel in the body. This is called the liver channel in Taoism and in Taoist medicine. And then this is going to be the gallbladder channel here. We've already stretched this once. We've sort of primed it, and now we're stretching it again. So here and here is ideal, but we'll take just in the waist. Now, once you're there, if you don't feel the stretch in your side, then you can roll or stack right shoulder over the left shoulder like so. And this is usually the way I do it. You can see my pose is not very pretty. It's nothing to write home about. And again, I always like to remind students that, yeah, that's not the main purpose of yoga postures. Some people in the past have tried to make yoga into an almost performance art, kind of a performance art. And there's a long tradition of this, so this isn't anything new. There were yogis, I think, in India back in the day, in British occupied India, who would do, you know, performances and things like that, weird contortions with their body for money. I think people just naturally are fascinated by the human body and what it can do. And so if someone can do something really interesting with their body, people might even pay money for that. But whether it's a yogi or a yoga teacher or anyone else doing that, for me, that's no longer yoga. It's not saying it's evil or bad, it's just not yoga, it's entertainment now. And there's nothing wrong with entertainment. But the goal of entertainment and the goal of yoga are very, very different from one another. So I like to just be clear in my own mind. So yes, we can use yoga postures to entertain others or entertain ourselves. We can dazzle and fascinate people with what we can do within our body. We can use what we can do with our body to kind of pump up our self-image and our self-worth. If we have low self-worth or self-image, if we get a lot of compliments, we get a lot of likes on social media, people paying attention to us, we might feel better about ourselves. But all of these things are dangerous from the yogic perspective. We're following a
path that does not really ultimately take us where yoga wants us to go, which is to realize the infinite peace, love, and joy that is our true nature, our inherent nature, which is deep inside of us. So one way of thinking of yoga, and this isn't the only way, is we start with the body. We start with the outermost layer of our being, you might say. And then we just very gradually work our way inward. And usually that's through the practice of meditation. So I've had several teachers in the past who have said these postures that we do in yoga, what we call in yoga asanas, these asanas are ultimately a preparation for seated meditation. That if they're doing their job one day, and it may be a very long time away, maybe years or decades, who knows, maybe even lifetimes if you believe in that. But ultimately, these stretches that we do, these yoga postures, they ultimately are preparing us to do seated meditation so that we can really go deeper into our own heart and mind and discover our true nature. All right, let's switch sides. Please, again, take your time. There's no rush. If you did the posture properly, there's likely to be a sense of sensitivity as you move from one side to the other. And then again, I recommend just starting here. I should have mentioned on the first side, don't be afraid to use a strap, okay? Our bodies are all different, and their capabilities are different. And one thing many people practicing yoga don't think about is something called proportion. Proportion. So what am I talking about when I say proportion? Well, proportion is the length of your limbs in different parts of your body. So for instance, my proportions as an individual are, relatively speaking, I don't think a freak of nature or anything like that. And some people have really extreme proportions. But generally, I have relatively short legs and arms and a relatively long torso. Other people have really long legs and arms and a shorter torso. And of course, there's any combination in between those two extremes. So if in a pose like this one, I try and reach down and grab my leg and I can't, I think many yoga students and even some yoga teachers automatically assume that that means you have a lack of flexibility. But what I learned from my yin teacher, Paul Grilly, is that that is not necessarily true. It could just be that someone who can grab their leg has short legs and a long torso and long arms. And that someone who can't grab their leg potentially has long legs and maybe a short torso and short arms. It's not that long legs or long limbs or short torsos are any better than anything else. Again, as human beings, our minds naturally, I think, move in this direction of what's best, what is better, what is worse, what is bad. And as much as I can, I'd like to encourage you while practicing yoga to move away from this type of thinking and really just accept your body and love your body as it is, and learn to work with your body to get the most benefit out of your yoga practice. because yoga can be really so good for your body, heart, and mind. All right, so please, again, take your time, no rush. We gradually are trying to make our way back onto our back to relax in stillness and Pentacle. Let's bring our legs in. And again, from my perspective, the movement here is just as important as the stillness in the last two postures that we did. So sometimes we don't feel like being still in the postures, right? But I would still encourage you to do so because I think there's a lot of benefit. And the same here, you may not feel like moving very much. But I think even if you don't feel like it, at this stage, it will probably benefit you to move some. Okay, we'll hinge up when ready. And it's at this point that I would like you to grab your blocks if you have them. Again, if you don't, you might stack up some books as an alternative. And I'll try and go over some alternative postures as well if you just can't or don't have anything that would allow you to do what we're trying to do next. So what we'd like to do is take one block and place it behind our back, and another and place it so that our head will rest on that block. Now the exact position for the blocks is going to depend on each individual, so you may have to experiment a little bit with where you place one block or the other block. And here is basically what we're looking for. You see I'm sort of propped up on the blocks. And the idea here, the intention here is not really for a deep back bend. I really don't care how much I'm getting in terms of the back bend. What I want is to position my arms in such a way that there's a stretch in the front of my chest, and I feel it right there. Okay, so I want to feel a stretch in the front of my chest, arms or shoulders, and I want to feel that while at the same time feeling that my back is safe and that my neck is safe. So Again, block under the head is fine, but you can also do this. And in the yoga tradition, these types of postures that stretch the front of the neck are said to help, balance and stimulate the thyroid and the other nerves and glands that are there in the neck. Now, if there is pain in your back, you can move the block. You can also bend your knees. It's another thing you can try, something like that. This posture is targeting the pectoralis major and minor in the front of the chest, the anterior deltoid at the front of the shoulder. And these muscles tend to get very tight and short because we sit many hours a day with our head forward of our shoulders rolled forward, kind of in like a hunchback position. Over time, these muscles get very short. Not only that, they learn that they are supposed to be short. You could say it gets programmed into our nervous system. So much so that even if we stretch these muscles, they will just return to being short the minute we're not consciously thinking of stretching them. This results in what we might call a bad or poor posture. So how do we fix poor or bad posture? Well, one way is with what's called passive stretching. Which is exactly what we're doing now. Several minutes of relaxing while enjoying a stretch. And this is one of the very unique benefits of the yin practice. Just about a minute left here. Okay, so please, please, please take your time. Gradually unwind, but keep at least one block handy, okay? because we're going to use it for this next posture. So this time, we bend our knees, press into our feet, we lift our hips up, and we place the block underneath our pelvis. Now again, the exact position of the block, the exact height, this varies a huge amount from one person to the next. What we'd like to do here is stretch this area. This is called your rectus abdominis. Okay, right in the front of your belly. That's your six-pack muscle group. And we want to do that without pinching our back or hurting ourselves. So again, taking the legs out, extending the arms up overhead. We're just trying to lengthen and stretch the front side of the body, especially again the abdomen. If there's pinching in your back and it feels unsafe, feel free to bend your knees as long as you still feel the stretch at the front of the abdomen. Same with the arms, you can bring them down, you can bend them, you can put them in any position you like, as long as you still feel the stretch in the abdomen. I mentioned earlier about the liver and gallbladder channel and how the posture we were doing was stimulating those meridians, what are called meridians in traditional Chinese medicine. But what I didn't mention is that every other set we've done has also stimulated meridians or channels in the body. In the model that I was taught from my teacher Paul Grilli, who studied with a gentleman named Dr. Motoyama, who was a Shinto priest, a yogi, a double PhD scientist, author. I learned a model where the meridians, or these energetic channels that run through the body, feed into what in yoga are called chakras. So the chakras are psycho-energetic plexuses in different places in the body that generally run along the spine. What both the Taoist and the yoga tradition have in common is this idea that unless these energy lines and energy centers are balanced and functioning properly, we will sooner or later experience first usually dis-ease, meaning emotional discomfort, mental discomfort. And then very often that will later lead to disease, physical problems. Some people might feel like they are emotionally fine, but they get sick, and then they wonder, well, it seems like things were reversed for me. I first got a physical illness, and then I started feeling I got upset because of it. But what we need to understand is that the human mind is relatively complex, and what we call our conscious awareness is very, very, very limited. Extremely limited. And so you might say that we aren't even aware of our own feelings and emotions on to a large degree. There are many things that are in our unconscious that drive us without us being aware of it. This is what the psychologist Carl Jung called the shadow side of the psyche or conscious. One of the benefits of doing deep work in yoga or in Taoism is that these unconscious emotions can be brought to light and can be dealt with, so that hopefully they won't one day again lead to disease. Okay, once again, please, please, please take your time. Remove the block. Gradually come on down. And I know you probably want to hug your legs in. I know that I do. But let's just see if we can take a moment and just, without hugging our legs, let the sensations dissipate on their own. And they have. I can feel there's much, much less sensation already. And at this point, I can straighten out my legs safely and comfortably. What's always interesting for us while rebounding in yin is to notice what we feel and where we feel it. Because as I've said in the past, it's often the area where we feel the most sensitivity and vulnerability where we're receiving the most benefit. Let's bring our legs in one last time, give them a squeeze, move around a bit, shake it out. If you feel a little sensitivity, again, that's not at all unusual or uncommon, and that should dissipate relatively quickly over the next few minutes, maybe hours, maybe days, depending on what it is. Then we will unwind one last time into a nice comfortable pentacle pose. This one feels good for me today. You close your eyes, and what you'd like to do is just relax for the next 6 minutes or so. Allow your body to be still. Relax any kind of focus in your mind. And just be. This will give your body the time and space that it needs to heal, to rebalance itself, to re-energize. And then you can get up and go about your day.
Okay, yogins, how was that for you? I hope you enjoyed that. Very similar to my spine flow, but just with a few little tweaks here to work different parts of the body. So I hope you enjoyed that. I'd love to know what your favorite pose was. And again, likes, comments, subscriptions, all really do help out the channel, help me out, help with the algorithms that spread the word. And feel free to share this with anybody. Again, all of these things are made free on purpose so that as many people can benefit as possible. I hope you benefited, and until next time, thank you and namaste.